The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across my mother Margaret's face as Sarah's coat slipped from her shoulders, revealing her 7-month pregnancy. The elegant dining room, moments before filled with cheerful Christmas conversation, fell into complete silence. 23 family members turned to stare while my mother's expression transformed from shock to pure rage. Her wineglass trembled as she stood, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "You are no longer my son, Henry. You and that bastard are dead to me. You are out of the will." I placed the wrapped box on the table, took Sarah's trembling hand, and walked out. 3 years before that explosive Christmas dinner, I had brought Sarah to meet my family for the first time. I remember the hope I felt driving up to my parents' estate in Connecticut, Sarah nervously adjusting her dress beside me, her hand finding mine as we parked. She was everything I had ever wanted in a partner: kind, intelligent, dedicated to her work as a pediatric nurse at Hartford Hospital. But I knew my mother would focus on what Sarah was not. She was not from money. She was not from our social circle. She was not what Margaret Henderson had planned for her eldest son. The introductions had gone exactly as I feared. My mother's smile never reached her eyes as she shook Sarah's hand, her gaze taking in Sarah's department store dress and modest jewelry with barely concealed disdain. My father, Robert, as always, remained diplomatically quiet, offering Sarah a warm handshake and genuine smile before retreating to his study. My younger sister Jennifer had immediately aligned with our mother, making cutting remarks disguised as compliments about how brave Sarah must be to work such long hours with sick children, how exhausting that must be compared to managing charitable foundations like the women in our family did. My younger brother Thomas had pulled me aside during that first dinner, warning me as we stood on the terrace. "Mom is already talking about the Ashford girl from the club. She has been planning your engagement announcement for the charity gala. You know how she gets when her plans get disrupted." Thomas had seen this before, had lived through it himself when he dated Amanda, a waitress he met during college. Mother had threatened to cut him from the will, had made his life miserable until Amanda finally left, unable to handle the constant pressure and humiliation. But Sarah was different. Sarah was stronger. Over the next 3 years, she tried everything to win my mother over. She volunteered at Mother's charity events, enduring snide comments from Mother's society friends. She learned about art and wine, subjects that mattered in Mother's world, only to have her efforts dismissed as trying too hard. She sent thoughtful birthday and holiday gifts that were always acknowledged with cold, formal thank you notes that might as well have been written by a stranger. The pattern of control through money had been Mother's weapon of choice my entire life. When I chose engineering over law, she threatened my college fund until Father intervened. When Thomas wanted to study abroad in Spain, she held his trust fund hostage until he agreed to summer in France instead, where the Wright families vacationed. Jennifer had learned early to simply comply, becoming Mother's perfect mirror, earning her position as the golden child who could do no wrong. Everything changed when Father had his mild heart attack 6 months ago. The doctors said it was stress-related, that he needed to slow down, to step back from the constant family drama. But Mother saw it differently. She saw mortality knocking at our door and tightened her grip on everyone and everything. She started meeting with lawyers weekly, making changes to the family trust, adding conditions and stipulations that would ensure her control extended even beyond the grave. Uncle Gerald, Mother's brother and the family lawyer, had pulled me aside at Thanksgiving, just a month before that fateful Christmas dinner. "Your mother has been making significant changes to the estate planning, Henry. I cannot tell you specifics, attorney-client privilege and all, but you should know she is serious about ensuring family loyalty." The way he said loyalty made my stomach turn. In Mother's vocabulary, loyalty meant complete obedience. 2 weeks before Christmas, Sarah had taken the pregnancy test. We had been trying for a year, had begun to worry it might never happen. When those 2 pink lines appeared, Sarah had collapsed in my arms, sobbing with joy. We spent that entire weekend in a bubble of happiness, planning nursery colors, discussing names, imagining the future we would build for our child. It was Sarah who suggested we announce it at Christmas dinner. "Maybe seeing me pregnant will soften her heart," she had said, her hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. "Maybe becoming a grandmother will change things." I had my doubts, But I could not deny Sarah this hope. She had endured 3 years of my mother's coldness with grace. She deserved the chance to try one more time. So we planned our announcement, even bought a small ornament that said "Baby's First Christmas" to hang on Mother's tree after we shared the news. How naive we were. The week before Christmas, I had been organizing Father's study while he recovered from a minor procedure when I found something that changed everything. Hidden in a box of old tax documents was a private investigator's report about Sarah. Mother had hired someone to dig into Sarah's past, looking for anything she could use as ammunition. The report was thorough, going back to Sarah's childhood, interviewing previous boyfriends, checking her credit history, her medical records, everything, and it was completely clean. Sarah was exactly who she appeared to be, a good woman from a working-class family, who had earned her nursing degree through scholarships and hard work, who had never been in trouble, who had lived an honest, decent life. But what caught my attention was the handwritten note in Mother's writing at the bottom of the report. "Nothing useful here. We'll need to create narrative instead." She was planning to lie, to manufacture a scandal where none existed. That was when I knew our Christmas announcement would not go as Sarah hoped. That was when I started preparing for war. The 2 weeks leading up to Christmas became a delicate dance of preparation and subterfuge. Every morning I would hold Sarah's hair back as morning sickness overwhelmed her, whispering reassurances that everything would be okay while my own stomach churned with anxiety about what was coming. She had no idea about the private investigator's report, and I could not bring myself to destroy her hope with that cruel reality. Instead, I channeled my anger into action, preparing for the confrontation I knew was inevitable. The present I prepared for Mother was not born from spite, but from a desperate need to break through her walls of privilege and prejudice. I spent long evenings after Sarah had gone to bed searching through the attic of my parents' house during my visits to check on Father. That was where I found it, buried in a trunk that had not been opened in decades. My grandfather William's journal, leather-bound and filled with his careful handwriting. As I read through it, I discovered a secret that Mother had never shared with any of us. Margaret herself had been pregnant before marriage. The entries detailed my grandfather's rage when he discovered his daughter's condition, his threats to disown her, the months of estrangement that followed. The pain in those pages was palpable, both his and hers. He wrote about his regret, about the letters he sent trying to reconcile, about showing up at her wedding to Robert, begging for forgiveness. But Mother had refused him. She had held on to her anger until the day he died, 5 years before I was born, never allowing him to meet his grandchildren. The parallels to our current situation were undeniable. History was repeating itself. But this time, I would not let it follow the same tragic path. I carefully photographed each relevant journal entry, had them professionally printed, and created a book that told the story of Mother's own fall from grace and her father's desperate attempts at redemption. But that was just the beginning of what would go in that box. Sarah and I had also created our own additions to the present. We had compiled a video of Sarah's parents, David and Marie, talking about how excited they were to be grandparents, how they had already started knitting blankets and buying toys, how they would love this baby whether my family accepted it or not. Their warmth and genuine joy stood in stark contrast to the cold reception we expected from Mother. We included ultrasound photos, each one labeled with captions like, "Your first grandchild at 8 weeks," and "Already has your nose at 16 weeks. During this time, Father had become our secret ally. Despite his recovery, he would slip away from Mother's watchful eye to meet us for coffee, his face lighting up when Sarah showed him the latest ultrasound pictures. "He is going to be beautiful," he would say, his eyes misty with emotion. "Do not worry about Margaret. I will handle her when the time comes." But we both knew Father's influence over Mother had waned since his heart attack. She treated him like a fragile doll, dismissing his opinions as being clouded by medication and weakness. Jennifer had started calling more frequently, her questions probing and suspicious. "Are you two coming to Christmas dinner? Just the two of you? No surprises planned, right?" Mother likes to have the seating arranged perfectly. Each call was a fishing expedition, trying to determine if we were planning something that might disrupt Mother's carefully orchestrated holiday performance for the extended family. Thomas visited us one evening, showing up unannounced with Chinese takeout and a warning. Mom has been bragging to everyone about some big announcement she is planning for Christmas dinner. Something about the future of the family legacy. I think she might be planning to announce Jennifer's engagement to that banking heir from Boston, but there is something else going on. She has been meeting with Gerald constantly, and not just about regular estate planning. He looked exhausted, the weight of being caught between family members wearing on him. That night, after Thomas left, Sarah broke down in our bedroom. "Maybe we should not go," she sobbed, her hand protectively covering her growing bump. "I cannot handle another Christmas of her looking at me like I am something she stepped in. Our child does not deserve to be born into this toxicity." I held her close, feeling our baby move for the first time between us, a flutter of life that strengthened my resolve. We would go to Christmas dinner, we would make our announcement, and if Mother reacted as I expected, I would deploy the nuclear option I had been preparing. Marcus, my lawyer and college roommate, had helped me prepare for the worst-case scenario. We had drawn up papers protecting Sarah's interests regardless of what Mother did with the will. I had documentation of Mother's harassment, including the private investigator's report with her handwritten note about creating a false narrative. If she tried to destroy my career through her connections, we would be ready with a defamation lawsuit. But more importantly, I had already accepted a standing offer from a competing engineering firm in Boston, one that had been trying to poach me for 2 years. The salary was double what I made at my current firm, which had connections to Mother's social circle. The final piece of preparation was the most painful, but necessary. Sarah and I had legally filed paperwork to change our last name from Henderson to Sarah's maiden name, Miller. The papers were signed and would be processed the day after Christmas. If Mother wanted to cut us out of the family, we would make it complete. We would become the Millers, starting our own family legacy built on love rather than money and manipulation. 3 days before Christmas, I made one last addition to the present. I wrote Mother a letter, not of anger, but of love. I told her about the first time I knew I wanted to marry Sarah, watching her comfort a dying child at the hospital during one of my visits. I wrote about how Sarah had taught me what unconditional love looked like, something I had never experienced in our home despite all its wealth and privilege. I ended the letter with a simple statement. "You have a choice, Mom. You can be part of your grandchild's life, or you can be a cautionary tale we tell them about how not to treat family. The choice is yours." Sarah spent those final days before Christmas preparing her own armor. She bought a new maternity dress that showed her pregnancy beautifully, refusing to hide what we were most proud of. She practiced her breathing exercises, the ones she taught to expecting mothers at the hospital, knowing she would need them to stay calm during whatever storm Mother would unleash. She wrote in her pregnancy journal every night, documenting not just the physical changes but her hopes and fears for our child. On Christmas Eve, we stood in our small apartment, looking at the wrapped box that contained so much more than just a present. It held truth, history, consequences, and maybe, just maybe, the key to redemption. Sarah pressed her hand against her belly, our baby responding with a strong kick. "Promise me something," she said quietly. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we do not let it ruin what we have. This child will know love, real love, even if it only comes from us and my parents." I promised her, sealing it with a kiss that tasted of tears and determination. Tomorrow would bring either reconciliation or destruction. Either way, we would face it together, as the family we had already become. Christmas Day arrived with fresh snow falling on Connecticut, coating my parents' estate in a deceptive blanket of purity. Sarah sat quietly beside me as we drove through the gates, her hands folded over her prominent belly hidden beneath her heavy coat. The driveway was packed with cars. Mother had invited the entire extended family, as was tradition. 23 people who would witness whatever was about to unfold. Cousin Amy greeted us at the door, her face lighting up with genuine warmth. She had always been different from the rest of Mother's side of the family, having married for love rather than money, working as a public school teacher despite the family's horror at such a common profession. "Henry, Sarah, you both look wonderful," she said, helping Sarah with her coat but respecting her wish to keep it on for now. Aunt Patricia, Mother's older sister, barely acknowledged us, her nose practically touching the ceiling as she walked past, already 3 glasses of champagne into the evening. The dining room was a masterpiece of Christmas elegance. The table could have been featured in a magazine, with its vintage china, crystal glasses that caught the light from the chandelier, and centerpieces of white roses and holly that must have cost more than most people's entire Christmas budget. Mother stood at the head of the table, holding court in a deep green dress that made her look like the queen she believed herself to be. She was in the middle of one of her stories about the charity gala she had organized, accepting praise from the assembled relatives like offerings to royalty. Father saw us enter and immediately came over, kissing Sarah's cheek and squeezing my shoulder. His color was better than it had been in months, but I could see the tension in his eyes. He knew something was going to happen tonight. He had seen Sarah's coat, how carefully she kept it wrapped around herself, and Father was many things, but stupid was not one of them. We took our assigned seats, strategically placed at the far end of the table from Mother, a clear indication of our current standing in the family hierarchy. Jennifer sat at Mother's right hand, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light every time she moved, a recent gift that screamed of favoritism. Thomas was relegated to the middle of the table, his punishment for some minor transgression, probably defending us one too many times. Mother stood to make her traditional Christmas toast, her voice carrying that perfect blend of warmth and authority she had perfected over decades of social manipulation. "This family," she began, her gaze sweeping over everyone but pointedly avoiding Sarah and me, "is built on tradition, on values, on maintaining the standards set by generations before us." She continued for several minutes, talking about legacy and loyalty, about the importance of choosing the right partners who understood their world. Several relatives nodded along, either oblivious to or complicit in the subtle attack on Sarah. As Mother raised her glass for the final toast to family, the moment of truth arrived. Sarah stood slowly, her movement drawing every eye in the room. With deliberate grace, she unbuttoned her coat and let it slip from her shoulders, revealing her navy blue maternity dress that beautifully showcased her 7-month pregnancy. The room went absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the Persian rug. Mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor with a sound like breaking bones. Her face went through a spectrum of emotions in seconds. Shock, disbelief, rage, each one more intense than the last. The color drained from her face, then rushed back in a wave of crimson that climbed from her neck to her hairline. The words that came out of Mother's mouth next would be burned into my memory forever. "How dare you," she hissed, her voice starting low but building in volume with each word. "How dare you bring this shame into my home, at my table, in front of my family?" She turned her fury from Sarah to me, her eyes blazing with a hatred I had never seen before, not even in her worst moments. "You are no longer my son," she declared, her voice now shrill enough to make several relatives flinch. "That thing," she pointed at Sarah's belly with a shaking finger, "is not my grandchild. It is a bastard, conceived in sin, a contamination of our bloodline. You want to throw your life away for this nobody, this gold-digging nurse who has manipulated you into destroying everything our family has built? Fine. You are dead to me. You are out of the will. You will get nothing, do you hear me? Nothing." Uncle Gerald tried to intervene, standing up with his hands raised in a calming gesture. "Margaret, please, it is Christmas. Think about what you are saying." But Mother was beyond reason, beyond reach. She turned on him next. "You knew about this, didn't you? You all knew and kept it from me." She spun around, addressing the entire room. "Anyone who supports this disgrace will be cut off just like him. Choose your side carefully." Jennifer, ever the opportunist, immediately stood and moved to Mother's side. "Mother is right," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Sarah has obviously trapped Henry for money. Look at her, showing up here pregnant, trying to force her way into our family. It is disgusting." The smirk on her face made my hands clench into fists, but I maintained my composure. This was not about Jennifer. This had always been about Mother. Thomas stood up next, but not where Jennifer expected. He walked over to where Sarah and I stood, positioning himself beside us. "If you disown Henry for loving someone and starting a family, then you have learned nothing from what happened with Amanda and me," he said quietly but firmly. "I will not stand by and watch you destroy another relationship because it does not fit your narrow view of acceptable. The room erupted into chaos. Relatives began choosing sides, voices rising in argument. Aunt Patricia declared her support for Mother, while Cousin Amy moved to stand with us. Robert, my father, was clutching his chest, not from a heart attack but from the visible pain of watching his family tear itself apart. Through it all, Sarah stood silent and dignified, her hand resting protectively on our child, tears streaming down her face but her head held high. I reached into the bag we had brought, pulling out the wrapped box that contained everything I needed Mother to see. I walked through the chaos, the arguments dying down as people watched me approach the head of the table. I placed the present directly in front of Mother's place setting, the elegant wrapping paper a stark contrast to the shattered glass and spilled champagne. "This is for you, Mom," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the room. "Open it when you are ready to understand what you are throwing away." Then I returned to Sarah, took her hand, and began walking toward the door. Mother's voice followed us, threats about ruining my career, about ensuring no one in Connecticut would hire me, about making sure everyone knew what ungrateful children we were. As we reached the door, something unexpected happened. Cousin Amy stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. "Aunt Margaret, I need to tell you something. I am pregnant too, 3 months along, and I am not married, do not plan to be. So if you are disowning Henry and Sarah, you need to disown me too." The room went silent again. Then Uncle Richard's son, Daniel, stood up. "I have been dating someone you would not approve of, Aunt Margaret. A man named James. We have been together for 2 years. If Amy goes, I go too." One by one, 3 more family members stood, each revealing something about themselves that went against Mother's rigid standards. A divorce kept secret, a job loss covered up, a child from a previous relationship never mentioned. The perfect family facade Mother had worked so hard to maintain crumbled before her eyes. Mother stood frozen, her kingdom collapsing around her. The present I had left sitting unopened on the table like a bomb waiting to explode. Sarah and I walked out into the snow, leaving behind the chaos, the threats, and the family that had chosen pride over love. As we sat in our car, Sarah finally broke down completely, sobbing into my chest while our baby kicked between us, as if reminding us that we were already a complete family, just the 3 of us. The drive home from Mother's estate felt like escaping a war zone. Sarah cried silently for the first 20 minutes, her tears falling onto her belly where our baby continued to move, oblivious to the drama it had just been at the center of. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Your mother called our baby a bastard. How does someone look at a pregnant woman and say something so cruel?" I had no answer that would make it better, so I just held her hand and drove through the snowy streets of Hartford toward our small apartment. The contrast between where we had been and where we were going struck me deeply. Mother's mansion, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, had felt like a cold mausoleum, while our 2-bedroom apartment with its second-hand furniture and photos covering every wall felt like home. My phone began buzzing before we even reached the highway. 23 missed calls, 47 text messages, and the numbers kept climbing. I turned it off and asked Sarah to do the same. We needed peace, needed time to process what had just happened, without the noise of family drama infiltrating our space. But the silence only lasted until we got home. Our landline, a relic we kept only because Sarah's parents preferred it, was ringing when we walked in. Sarah answered, probably hoping it was her mother. But Thomas's voice filled the room through the speaker. "Henry, I know you are there. Pick up. Please." Mother has not touched the present. She locked herself in her room and will not come out. Father is having chest pains again. Jennifer is telling everyone you planned this to humiliate Mother. The whole family is in chaos. What was in that box? I picked up the receiver, switching off the speaker to protect Sarah from more pain. "Not yet, Thomas. She needs to open it herself." "How bad is Father? Should we call an ambulance?" There was a pause. Then Thomas sighed. "Uncle Gerald is monitoring him. He says it is stress, not another heart attack. But Henry, what you did tonight, walking out like that, it was nuclear." Mother is beyond rage. She is calling everyone, her lawyer, her connections at your firm, Even that judge she knows from the country club. Let her, I replied, feeling oddly calm. I have prepared for all of it. Take care of Father, Thomas. That is what matters now. I hung up before he could respond. Sarah was in our bedroom, already changed into comfortable clothes, sitting on the bed with her pregnancy journal. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What was in the box, Henry? What could possibly make this better? I sat beside her and explained everything. The journal entries from grandfather William, the photos, the video from her parents, the legal documents showing our name change, everything. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from surprise to understanding to something that looked like hope. Do you really think it will change anything? She asked when I finished. Your mother seems incapable of seeing past her own pride. Maybe not, I admitted, pulling her close. But at least she will know the truth about her own past. She will have to face the fact that she is becoming exactly what she hated in her own father. And if that does not wake her up, then at least we know we tried everything. The next morning, day 2 of our exile from the Henderson family, my boss called my personal cell. William Patterson was a decent man who had mentored me since I joined the firm 5 years ago. But he was also a practical businessman who valued his connection to Mother's social circle. Henry, I received some disturbing calls last night, he began, his discomfort evident in his voice. Your mother has made some serious allegations about your character, about your judgment. The board is concerned. I understand, William. Would you like my resignation? Or should I save you the trouble and just not come in on Monday? There was a long pause. I wish it had not come to this, Henry. You are one of our best engineers. But the Henderson family has been instrumental in several of our largest contracts. I hope you understand. I understood perfectly. Mother's reach was long, and her vengeance was swift. But I was prepared. Within an hour, I had called Marcus to initiate the defamation lawsuit we had prepared, and contacted Boston Engineering Group to accept their standing offer. They were thrilled to have me start immediately after the new year, and the signing bonus alone would cover our expenses for the next 6 months. When I told Sarah, she actually smiled for the first time since Christmas dinner. Boston will be a fresh start, she said, rubbing her belly. The baby will be born into a life free from all this poison. But the family drama was far from over. Jennifer showed up at our apartment that afternoon, using the spare key I had forgotten she had. She waltzed in like she owned the place, her designer heels clicking on our hardwood floors. I heard you got fired, she said with barely concealed glee. Mother's reach is longer than you thought, isn't it? And this is just the beginning. She has connections in Boston too, you know. I studied my sister, really looked at her for the first time in years. She was 28 years old, beautiful in that carefully maintained way that money could buy, with Mother's sharp features and cold eyes. But underneath the designer clothes and perfect makeup, I saw something else. Fear. Jennifer had built her entire life around being Mother's perfect daughter, and now she was watching what happened to those who stepped out of line. Are you happy, Jennifer? I asked suddenly, catching her off guard. The question seemed to confuse her. What do you mean? I mean, when you wake up in the morning, are you happy with your life? With spending every day trying to please someone who will never be satisfied? With giving up any chance at real love because Mother has to approve of everyone you date? With being so terrified of losing your inheritance that you have never taken a single risk or made a single choice that was truly your own? Her face flushed, and for a moment, I saw a crack in her facade. Then she steeled herself, the mask sliding back into place. At least I will have an inheritance, she spat. Enjoy your middle-class life, Henry. I hope she is worth it. She stormed out, but not before I saw her eyes land on Sarah's pregnancy journal on the coffee table, something flickering across her face that might have been longing. 3 days passed with no word about the present. Thomas kept us updated through carefully worded texts. M still has not opened it. F is stable but worried. Gerald trying to mediate. Then, on December 28th, 3 days after Christmas, Uncle Gerald called. His voice was strained, exhausted. Henry. She finally opened it. She has been screaming and crying for 2 hours. She wants to see you immediately. No, I said firmly. She does not get to summon me like a servant after what she said about my wife and child. If she wants to talk, she knows where we live." Gerald sighed heavily. "I understand. Henry, I read what you put in that box. The journal entries, the parallels to her own situation. It was brilliant and brutal. She cannot hide from the truth now, but you should know, she is not handling it well. Good. Maybe falling apart will help her rebuild into something better." The call ended with Gerald promising to try to talk sense into Mother, but I knew better than to hope. Margaret Henderson had never admitted to being wrong in her entire life. The chance of her starting now seemed impossibly small. Let me tell you exactly what was in that box that reduced my mother to hours of screaming and tears. It was not just a present. It was a mirror, a time machine, and a prophecy all wrapped in expensive paper with a silk ribbon. The first thing Mother would have seen upon opening the box was a photo of herself at 23 years old, pregnant with me, standing next to her father at her wedding to Robert. It was a photo I had found hidden behind another picture in Grandfather William's study years ago. Mother wore a empire waist dress that carefully concealed her condition, but the date on the back of the photo and my birth date 6 months later told the real story. She had been pregnant before marriage, just like the accusation she had hurled at Sarah. Beneath the photo was Grandfather William's journal, open to the entry from the day he discovered his daughter's pregnancy. The words were harsh, cruel even, filled with the same venom Mother had spewed at Christmas dinner. "Margaret has disgraced our family name. She has thrown away everything we built for her for a moment of weakness with that boy Robert. I told her today she is no longer my daughter. She is cut from the will, cut from our lives. She and that bastard she carries are dead to me." I had marked every relevant passage with small tabs, creating a roadmap of Grandfather's journey from rage to regret. 3 months after disowning Mother, he wrote, "I drove past their apartment today. Such a small place, nothing like what Margaret grew up with. I saw her through the window, her belly now showing clearly. She looked tired, but happy. Robert was bringing her tea. They looked at each other with such love. What have I done?" 6 months after that, Margaret had the baby. A boy. They named him Henry William, my own name given to a grandchild I am forbidden to meet. Martha says I am a fool, that pride is a cold bedfellow. She is right. I have written Margaret 17 letters. She returns them all unopened. The entries continued for 5 years, documenting every attempt at reconciliation, every birthday and Christmas where he stood outside their home, hoping for a glimpse of his grandchildren. Every letter returned, every phone call refused. The final entry, written 2 days before his death, was the most heartbreaking. "I will die tomorrow, or the day after," the doctors say. My greatest regret is not the money I made or lost, not the business deals that went wrong, but the 5 years I lost with my daughter and grandchildren because I could not see past my own pride. Margaret has become everything I wanted her to be, not because of my demands, but in spite of them. I pray she does not make my mistakes. I pray she does not let pride rob her of love. After the journal came a folder of documents I had compiled. Sarah's parents, David and Marie, had written a letter to Mother, though they had never met her. It read, "Mrs. Henderson, we understand you do not approve of our daughter or her relationship with your son. We are simple people. David works construction. I am a retired school teacher. We do not have wealth or social standing, but we have something that seems to be missing from your family. We have love, unconditional and freely given. Our grandchild will know that love whether you choose to be part of their life or not. But we hope, for everyone's sake, especially the babies, that there is room in this child's life for all of their grandparents. Pride is a luxury no grandparent can afford." Next came the ultrasound photos, but not just the standard medical images. Sarah had gone to a special imaging center that created 3-dimensional pictures. You could see our baby's face clearly, the Henderson nose already prominent, the strong chin that was unmistakably from Mother's side of the family. Each photo was labeled, "Your grandchild at 16 weeks, your grandchild sucking their thumb at 20 weeks, your grandchild's face, a perfect blend of Henderson and Miller features." I had included Sarah's pregnancy journal, or rather, copies of specific pages where she had written about Mother, not the angry entries after being snubbed or insulted, but the hopeful ones from early in our relationship. I hope Henry's mother will like me. I bought a dress in her favorite color for the charity gala. Maybe if I learn more about art, we will have something to talk about. And the most recent one, written the night before Christmas. I know Margaret does not approve of me, but I hope when she sees the baby, her grandchild, her heart will soften. Every child deserves to be loved by their grandparents. The video compilation was perhaps the cruelest and kindest thing in the box. I had secretly recorded Father over the past month whenever he talked about the baby, his face glowing as he discussed possible names, his plans to teach his grandchild to fish, his quiet admission that he would choose his grandchild over Margaret if forced to make that choice. The video ended with Father looking directly at the camera, not knowing he was being recorded, practicing what he wanted to say to the baby when it was born. "Hello, little one. I am your grandfather, Robert. I have waited so long to meet you. You are already so loved, more than you could possibly know." Then came the legal documents, not threats, but simple facts. The name change certificate showing that Sarah and I would legally become the Millers on December 26th. My acceptance letter from Boston Engineering Group, with the salary highlighted, double what I had been making, proving we did not need Mother's money. The trust fund I had set up for our child's education, funded with my own savings and the signing bonus from the new job, showing we were prepared to provide for our child without any Henderson money. But the most devastating item was a simple spreadsheet I had created. On one side, I listed everything Mother had threatened to take away: money, social standing, family name, connections, inheritance. On the other side, I listed what we were keeping: love, happiness, anticipation for our child, Sarah's family support, freedom from manipulation, the chance to raise our child without toxic influences. At the bottom, I had written, "You taught me that everything has a price, Mother. Here is what your pride is costing you, and what my love is earning me. I am the richer man." The final item in the box was a single sheet of paper with one paragraph. "Mother, your father died regretting the years he lost with you because of his pride. You have spent my entire life telling me that family is everything, that legacy matters, that the Henderson name must be protected and continued. But what is family without love? What is legacy without connection? What is a name without the people who carry it? You have 24 hours to decide if you want to repeat your father's mistakes or break the cycle. If I do not hear from you by December 29th at 5 p.m., we will proceed with our plan to move to Boston and begin our lives as the Miller family. The choice, as you have always liked to say, is yours." I had not included any photos of Sarah and me together, nothing that showed our happiness or our love. That was not the point. The point was to show Mother her own reflection, her own history, her own future if she continued down this path. Every item in that box was carefully chosen to bypass her defenses, to speak directly to the frightened 23-year-old she had once been, disowned and discarded by a father whose pride mattered more than love. Thomas later told me that when Mother finally opened the box, she had methodically gone through each item, her face growing paler with every page she read, every photo she saw. When she reached her father's journal, she began shaking. When she saw the video of Father talking about the baby, she started crying. And when she read the final ultimatum, she screamed, not in anger, but in anguish, the sound of someone watching their carefully constructed world collapse and realizing they had built it on foundations of sand and spite. December 29th arrived gray and bitter cold, with a wind that cut through clothing like accusations through pride. At 6 a.m, our doorbell rang. Sarah was still sleeping, the pregnancy exhausting her more as she entered her final trimester. I opened the door to find Mother standing there, alone, looking like she had aged 10 years in 4 days. Margaret Henderson, who never left her house without perfect makeup and designer clothing, stood on my doorstep in a wrinkled dress, her hair uncombed, her face naked and ravaged by tears. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, as if the weight of her pride had been the only thing keeping her spine straight all these years. The woman who commanded rooms with her presence now could not meet my eyes. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice hoarse from crying or screaming. Or both. I stepped aside wordlessly, watching as she entered our humble apartment, her gaze taking in the comfortable furniture, the photos of Sarah and me on every surface, the small Christmas tree we had decorated together, still twinkling in the corner. She stopped at the mantel, staring at the ultrasound photo we had framed and displayed prominently. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. She stood there, studying that image of her grandchild, her hand half raised as if she wanted to touch it, but did not have the right. When she finally turned to face me, tears were streaming down her face again. "I read it all," she said simply. "Every word of my father's journal, every word he wrote about me, about you, about the grandchildren he never got to know." She moved to our second-hand couch, sitting down carefully as if she might break something or be thrown out at any moment. "I have been a fool, Henry. No, worse than a fool. I have been exactly what I swore I would never become. I became my father, but without his excuse of ignorance. I knew how it felt to be discarded, to be called a disgrace, to have my child called a bastard. I knew that pain intimately, and I inflicted it anyway." Sarah emerged from our bedroom then, wrapped in her bathrobe, her belly prominent beneath the soft fabric. She stopped when she saw Mother, her hand instinctively going to protect our child. Mother stood immediately, taking a step towards Sarah before stopping herself. "Sarah," she began, then seemed to lose her words. The two women stood there, facing each other across the small living room, decades of hurt and hope hanging between them. "I owe you an apology that words cannot adequately convey," Mother finally managed. "What I said about you, about your child, my grandchild, was unforgivable. I let my pride, my fear of losing control, my stupid obsession with social standing turn me into a monster. I called your baby what my father called Henry. I became the very person who broke my heart 40 years ago." Sarah did not move, did not speak, just watched Mother with those gentle eyes that had first made me fall in love with her. Mother continued, the words pouring out like a dam had broken. "I hired someone to investigate you because I was terrified. Not of you being wrong for Henry, but of you being right. You had everything I was taught did not matter but secretly knew was everything. Love, kindness, genuine warmth. You looked at my son the way I wished someone had looked at me before Robert, with complete acceptance and joy." She pulled out a folder from her purse, hands shaking. "These are the papers Gerald drew up 3 months ago, the ones cutting Henry from the will if he did not leave you. I had him draw up new ones this morning." She pulled out another document. "Everything goes to Henry and your child, no conditions, no stipulations. Jennifer and Thomas are provided for, but the bulk of it, including the family home, goes to your baby. We do not want your money," Sarah finally spoke, her voice steady but not unkind. "We never did. We wanted your love, your acceptance, your presence in our child's life. Money cannot buy back the words you said, cannot erase the pain you caused, cannot magically make you a different person. What makes you think anything has really changed?" Mother's face crumbled completely then. She fell back onto the couch, sobbing in a way I had never seen her cry, not even when her own mother died. Between gasps, she told us things we had never known, about the years after grandfather disowned her, how she and father had lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, surviving on his entry-level salary, how she had sworn her children would never feel that financial insecurity, how that fear had slowly transformed into an obsession with wealth and status. But the most shocking revelation came next. "I have cancer," she said quietly. "Early stage, treatable. The doctors say I have excellent odds. But when they told me 2 weeks ago, my first thought was not about dying. It was about who would inherit, who would control the trust, who would maintain the family image. It was not until I read my father's journal, saw that he died with the same regrets I would die with, that I realized I had wasted my entire life on things that do not matter." Sarah sat down then, her inherent compassion overcoming her justified anger. She did not sit next to Mother, but she sat, which was more grace than Mother deserved. "What do you want from us, Margaret?" Sarah asked directly. "Because if you are here thinking one apology erases years of cruelty, you are mistaken. If you think you can walk back into our lives and play grandmother when it suits you, You are wrong. Trust is earned, not inherited. Mother nodded, wiping her eyes with a tissue that was already destroyed. I know. I am not asking for forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I am asking for a chance to earn it. I want to know my grandchild. I want to support your choices, your family, your happiness. I want to be the mother and grandmother I should have been all along. But I understand if that door is closed. I closed it myself with my cruelty. I finally spoke, my voice harder than Sarah's but softer than I expected. You humiliated Sarah in front of 23 family members. You called our child a bastard. You tried to destroy my career. You threatened to ruin our lives. One conversation does not fix that. One apology does not heal those wounds. If you are serious about changing, about being part of our lives, it starts with actions, not words. What kind of actions? Mother asked. And for the first time in my life, I heard genuine humility in her voice. First, I said, a public apology, not just to us, but to everyone who was at that dinner. Second, family therapy. All of us, including Father and Jennifer and Thomas if they will come. Third, you meet Sarah's parents, and you treat them with the same respect you show your country club friends. Fourth, you accept that we are moving to Boston, that we are changing our name to Miller, and that our child will be raised our way, with our values. Mother absorbed each condition without protest, nodding slowly. Then she surprised us both. I already called everyone who was at dinner. I told them I was wrong, that I was cruel, that you and Sarah have my full support and anyone who has a problem with that is no longer welcome in my life. Patricia hung up on me, but Amy and Daniel and the others were supportive. I have already made an appointment with a family therapist for next week. As for Sarah's parents, I would be honored to meet them, to apologize to them as well. The room fell silent again. Our baby chose that moment to kick, hard enough that Sarah gasped. Mother's eyes went to Sarah's belly, that same longing look from earlier returning. Without thinking, Sarah reached for Mother's hand, placing it on her stomach where the baby was moving. Mother's face transformed with wonder as she felt her grandchild for the first time. Tears flowing again, but different now. Softer, filled with awe rather than anguish. That is your grandson, Sarah said quietly, and I saw Mother's eyes widen. A boy? She whispered. A boy, I confirmed. Due in 8 weeks. We are naming him William David, after both grandfathers. Mother's composure shattered completely. She pulled her hand back as if she did not deserve to touch Sarah, covering her face as sobs racked her body. My father's name, she choked out. You are giving him my father's name after everything I did. People can change, Margaret, Sarah said, her hand still on her belly where William continued his acrobatics. Your father never got the chance to prove it. You do. But understand this. You get one chance. One. If you ever speak to our child the way you spoke about him at Christmas, if you ever try to manipulate or control him with money or threats, if you ever make him feel less than perfect exactly as he is, you will never see him again. That is not a threat. It is a promise. Mother looked at both of us, really looked, and nodded. I understand. I accept all your conditions. I will earn this second chance. Then she stood to leave, pausing at the door. Robert wanted to come with me, but I needed to do this alone first. He loves you both so much. He has been defending you since Christmas, refusing to speak to me until I made this right. You might not believe this, but he is the happiest I have seen him in years, knowing he is going to be a grandfather. After she left, Sarah and I sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, Sarah spoke. Do you think she meant it? Do you think she can really change? I pulled her close, feeling William kick between us. I don't know, I answered honestly, but her father never got the chance to try. Maybe that is the real gift we gave her, not just showing her the past, but offering her a different future. 8 weeks later, on a snowy February morning, Sarah went into labor 3 weeks early. The contractions started at 4 a.m., and by 6 we were at the hospital in Boston, our new city that had become home faster than we expected. As the nurses prepared the delivery room, Sarah squeezed my hand through a particularly intense contraction and gasped, "Call your mother." Those 3 words carried more weight than just an invitation. They were an acknowledgement of the transformation we had witnessed over the past 2 months. Mother had not just apologized. She had revolutionized her entire life. The family therapy sessions had been brutal but breakthrough-filled, with Mother confronting decades of learned behavior and toxic patterns. She had sold several of her precious antiques to donate to Sarah's hospital's pediatric wing. She had hosted Sarah's parents for dinner, serving Marie's favorite pot roast recipe instead of her usual 5-course formal meals. Most remarkably, she had stood up at her annual charity gala in front of 300 of Connecticut's elite and told the entire story. Her pregnancy, her father's rejection, her repetition of the pattern, and her journey toward redemption. She had ended by announcing that the Henderson Foundation would now focus on supporting single mothers and families estranged due to prejudice and pride. The speech had gone viral. Not that Mother cared about social media, but it had sparked conversations in families across the country about forgiveness and second chances. I called Mother as Sarah was wheeled into delivery. She and Father were already in the car, having kept a bag packed for weeks just in case. "We will be there in 2 hours," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Tell Sarah we are coming. Tell her I love her. Tell her I love you both." They were words I had never heard from Mother before the Christmas explosion, but now heard regularly, as if she was making up for 40 years of silence. William David Miller entered the world at 2:17 p.m., screaming with healthy lungs and immediately stealing everyone's heart. When the nurse placed him on Sarah's chest, our son opened his eyes and looked directly at us, as if he had been waiting to meet us just as much as we had been waiting for him. He had the Henderson nose, just as the ultrasound had predicted, but Sarah's gentle eyes and my stubborn chin. He was perfect. Mother and Father arrived just as we were moved to the recovery room. Mother entered tentatively, still uncertain of her welcome despite 2 months of reconciliation. She had brought a small gift bag, not the elaborate arrangements that would have been her old style, but something simple and heartfelt. Sarah, exhausted but glowing, smiled and gestured for Mother to come closer. "Would you like to hold your grandson, Margaret?" The look on Mother's face as she held William for the first time was worth every moment of pain from Christmas. She cradled him like he was made of spun glass and stardust, tears streaming down her face as William wrapped his tiny finger around hers. "Hello, sweet boy," she whispered. "I am your grandmother, and I promise you something right now. You will always be loved for exactly who you are. You will never have to earn my affection or meet my conditions. You are perfect just by existing." Father held William next, and I watched my reserved, stolid father melt completely, cooing and making faces at his grandson. Jennifer arrived an hour later, having driven up from New York where she was now living, having taken a job there to escape Mother's shadow. The therapy sessions had been hardest on her, confronting how much of herself she had sacrificed for conditional approval. She was different now, softer, more genuine. She brought a handmade blanket she had been secretly knitting, something the old Jennifer would have considered beneath her. Thomas arrived that evening with his new girlfriend, Rebecca, a kindergarten teacher who Mother would have previously dismissed as unsuitable. But when Mother met her, she embraced Rebecca warmly, welcoming her to the family without a single question about her family's social standing or financial status. The change was not just surface level, it was bone deep, soul deep. Sarah's parents arrived the next day, having driven through the night from Ohio. The meeting between the grandparents could have been awkward, but Mother had done her work. She embraced David and Marie like old friends, thanking them for raising such an incredible daughter, asking Marie for advice about babies, since it had been so long since she had held one. They spent hours together in the hospital room, 4 grandparents united in their love for William, social differences irrelevant in the face of this new life. Over the next months, Mother became the grandmother we had never dared hope for. She respected our parenting choices, offering advice only when asked. She babysat so Sarah and I could have date nights, getting down on the floor to play with William despite her bad knees. She read him stories, sang him lullabies she had never sung to us, loved him with an openness that transformed her. The moment that proved how complete her transformation was came at William's first birthday. Mother had offered to host the party at her estate, but instead of the formal affair we expected, she had created a wonderland of joy. A petting zoo in the garden, a bounce house on the lawn, finger foods instead of formal dining. But the real shock came during the toast. Mother stood before the assembled guests, many of them the same people who had witnessed the Christmas disaster, and spoke from her heart. A year and a half ago, I almost lost everything that mattered because I could not see past my own pride and prejudice. I called my grandson terrible things before he was even born. I rejected the woman who has become like a daughter to me. I drove away my son with cruelty and threats. But they gave me something I did not deserve, a second chance. She looked directly at Sarah and me, then down at William in Sarah's arms. This child saved my life, not from cancer, which is now in remission, but from becoming a bitter, lonely woman who valued money over meaning, status over soul. Every day I am grateful that my son had the courage to stand up to me, to show me the mirror I needed to see, to offer me redemption when I deserved abandonment. The room was silent, many guests wiping tears. Mother continued, "Let this be a lesson to all of us. Family is not about blood or money or social standing. It is about love, unconditional and freely given. It is about second chances and the courage to change. It is about choosing connection over control every single day." Later that evening, as the party wound down, Mother pulled me aside. She handed me an envelope. Inside was the deed to the family estate, transferred to Sarah and me. I started to protest, but she stopped me. "This house needs laughter again. It needs children running through the halls, finger paintings on the refrigerator, toys scattered on the Persian rugs. It needs to be a home, not a museum. Your father and I have bought a smaller place nearby. We want to be close, but we also want you to build your own traditions, your own memories." 3 years have passed since that transformative Christmas. William is an active, happy toddler who has his grandmother wrapped around his tiny finger. Sarah is pregnant again, with twin girls this time, and Mother's excitement could power the entire eastern seaboard. The family business that Mother once used as a weapon is now run by Thomas, with new policies about work-life balance and family leave that would have horrified the old Margaret Henderson. Jennifer married for love last spring, to a public school principal she met at one of Rebecca's education fundraisers. Mother not only attended the wedding but gave a speech about how Jennifer's courage to pursue her own happiness had inspired her to continue her own journey of growth. The wedding was small, intimate, nothing like the society event Mother would have once demanded. It was perfect. Father's health has improved dramatically since the family drama settled. He and Mother renewed their vows on their 43rd anniversary, with William as the ring bearer. The ceremony was in our backyard, with Sarah's parents, all the siblings, and the cousins who had stood up at that fateful Christmas dinner. Even Aunt Patricia came, having finally apologized after her own husband threatened to leave her if she did not examine her toxic behavior. The Henderson Foundation has become a national model for family reconciliation programs. Mother speaks regularly at conferences, sharing her story of pride, fall, and redemption. She always ends with the same line. "The greatest gift my son ever gave me was not grandsons or forgiveness. It was the chance to become the person I should have been all along." The box he left that Christmas did not just contain mirrors to my past. It contained doors to my future. Last week, I found Mother in the nursery we had prepared for the twins, sitting in the rocking chair, reading from a worn leather journal. It was Grandfather William's journal, but she was reading from new entries, ones she had started writing herself. They were letters to her grandchildren, telling them about the mistakes she made, the lessons she learned, the love she feels. She wants them to know their history, all of it, the beautiful and the ugly, so they can make better choices. As I watched her there, this woman who had traveled so far from who she was that Christmas night, I realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is not what they want, but what they need. Not comfortable lies, but uncomfortable truths. Not easy acceptance, but challenging love that demands growth. The present I left on that table was never just about changing Mother. It was about breaking cycles, healing generational wounds, and choosing love over legacy. Our family is not perfect. We still have therapy sessions. We still have moments of tension when old patterns try to resurface. But we have something we never had before: that explosive Christmas dinner. We have authenticity. We have unconditional love. We have the kind of family that William and his sisters will be proud to continue, not because of our name or wealth, but because of our capacity to grow, forgive, and love without conditions. The Henderson name that Mother once wielded like a weapon is gone from our immediate family. We are the Millers now, by choice and with pride. But the Henderson heart, the one that was buried under decades of pride and prejudice, beats strong in William's chest and in the twins growing in Sarah's belly. They will know where they came from, all of it, and they will know that people can change, that love can conquer pride, that sometimes the most precious gifts come wrapped in the hardest truths. Every Christmas now, we gather at what is now our home, the estate transformed from a cold monument to wealth into a warm haven of family. The crystal chandelier that once illuminated my humiliation now shines on children's laughter and genuine joy. The table that bore witness to our family's destruction now hosts our resurrection. And in the center of that table, every year, sits an empty box, beautifully wrapped, a reminder of the Christmas that changed everything. Mother always raises a toast to that empty box, to second chances, to the courage it takes to change. But most of all, she toasts to Sarah, the woman she once rejected who became the daughter she never knew she needed, and to the grandchildren who taught her that love is the only inheritance that truly matters. What would you do if your family chose pride over love? Would you have the courage to hold up the mirror, to demand better, to walk away if necessary? Have you ever had to choose between family approval and personal happiness? How did you navigate that impossible choice? I would love to hear your stories of family reconciliation, of cycles broken, of love conquering pride. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that change is possible, that families can heal, that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as the hardest truths. Thank you for joining me on this journey from pain to redemption. May your own family stories, whatever they may be, lead you toward love, authenticity, and the courage to change. Until next time, remember that family is not about perfection but about the willingness to grow together, to forgive deeply, and to love without conditions.